The confirmation email wasn't meant for me. It popped up on our shared tablet at 4:12 p.m., right between a grocery receipt and a reminder for Ethan's Chicago Leadership Summit. Except the flight wasn't to Chicago. It was to Cabo. 2 first-class tickets. Oceanfront resort package, couples massage, sunset dinner for 2, under my husband's name, and under hers. Madison Cole, the consultant, he once told me I had nothing to worry about. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My hand stayed perfectly still as I zoomed in on the details. 5 nights, 1 suite, champagne welcome service. He had kissed me goodbye that morning and said, "It's just work, Gianna. I'll be exhausted." Work doesn't usually include rose petals and anniversary packages. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not heartbreak, not yet, clarity. Because when my husband landed in Cabo with his lover, I was already there, and I wasn't alone. My name is Gianna Russo, and until that Tuesday afternoon I believed my marriage was solid. Not perfect, not effortless, but steady. 15 years with Ethan. A home in San Diego overlooking a quiet canyon. 2 careers that demanded long hours and constant travel. We had postponed children more times than I could count after this promotion, he would say. After things calmed down. Things never calmed down. When I opened the full travel itinerary, I noticed the details most people would overlook. The departure time, the return gate, the confirmation code. I memorized it all before taking screenshots and forwarding everything to a private email Ethan didn't know existed. The booking included an anniversary celebration enhancement package. Anniversary. Ours wasn't until September. My chest felt tight, but my mind was sharp. I walked into our bedroom closet and stared at the empty space where his navy suitcase had been. He'd packed the night before while telling me about keynote speakers in Chicago. I had helped him choose a tie. "Do you think this one looks authoritative enough?" he'd asked with a grin. I remember smiling back. Now the memory felt staged. I checked our joint credit card statement. The resort charges had already posted categorized under corporate client travel. Ethan had used his company account. This wasn't just personal betrayal. This was professional misconduct. And Ethan cared about his reputation more than anything. I sat down at the kitchen island and replayed the past 6 months in my mind. Late meetings, sudden client emergencies, text messages he angled away from me. Madison's name mentioned casually at dinner. "She's sharp," he had said once. "Ambitious. Reminds me of you when we were younger." I remember laughing lightly at that. Now I wondered how long it had been going on. 3 months? 6? A year? I searched Madison's name online. Her Instagram profile was public, sunlit selfies, conference photos, captions about gratitude and new beginnings. And there he was, Daniel Brooks, her fiancé. Handsome, polished, successful. 3 weeks ago, he had posted a photo of the 2 of them at a rooftop restaurant. Caption: "Finalizing wedding details. Couldn't be more certain." I stared at that word. Certain. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Boarding soon. Might be spotty Wi-Fi tonight. Love you." I read it twice. "Love you." My fingers hovered over the screen before I typed back. "Have a safe flight." I set the phone down gently. Then I opened my laptop. Because heartbreak is one thing. But clarity? Clarity demands action. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying, I wasn't, but because my mind refused to slow down. Every detail replayed itself in sharp focus. The confirmation code. The anniversary package. The way Ethan had kissed my forehead that morning like nothing in the world was wrong. By 6:30 a.m., I had already found Daniel Brooks' company website. He was listed as managing partner of Brooks and Halstead Development. There was a direct email address beneath his bio. My fingers hovered over the keyboard longer than I expected. Once I sent the message, there would be no pretending this was a misunderstanding. I typed, "Daniel. My name is Gianna Russo. I believe our partners are currently traveling together to Cabo San Lucas under false pretenses. I have documentation confirming shared flights and a couple's resort booking. I understand how extreme this sounds. I wouldn't reach out if I wasn't certain. If you would like to verify the truth before making any permanent decisions about your future, we need to speak. Gianna." I attached the flight itinerary and the resort confirmation. Then I pressed send. 12 minutes later, my phone rang. "Unknown number." I answered. "Gianna?" His voice was controlled, but strained. Yes. This is Daniel. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing through his nose like he was trying to stay measured. Tell me this is fabricated, he said quietly. I wish I could. Silence. Then, she told me she was taking a solo reset trip before wedding planning. Said she needed space. She told Ethan I was fine with Chicago. I replied. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally he asked. How long have you known? About 14 hours. A short, bitter laugh escaped him. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I'm sorry you are too. He cleared his throat. You're certain it's not coincidence? I opened the confirmation again even though I didn't need to. Same flight, same resort, oceanfront suite, anniversary package. His voice dropped lower. She and I have been together 3 years. Ethan and I have been married 15. There, it was the shared weight. We didn't know each other, but we understood each other instantly. So what now? Daniel asked. I stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the canyon behind our house. They think they're safe, I said slowly. They think distance protects them. Daniel didn't respond immediately. Then, are you suggesting we confront them? I'm suggesting, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, that we don't give them the luxury of secrecy. A breath left his lungs. You want to go there? Yes. Another pause. When do they land? Friday. 10:30 a.m. Daniel was quiet for a full 5 seconds. Then he said, Send me the flight details. I felt something shift inside me, not vengeance, not rage, but alignment. We're not doing this impulsively, I said. No scenes, no screaming, just clarity. I don't scream, Daniel replied calmly. Good, I said. Neither do I. He exhaled slowly. Okay, he said. If they're going to pretend this is a romantic getaway, then they can explain it in person. In person, I agreed. After we hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. I didn't look broken. I looked focused. And for the first time since that email appeared, I felt something close to control. If Ethan believed he was stepping into 5 days of fantasy, he had no idea who was waiting on the other side of that arrival gate. Daniel and I met the next afternoon at a quiet cafe overlooking the La Jolla shoreline. The kind of place where people discussed investments and weekend sailing plans, not betrayal. He stood when I approached the table. In another life, we might have met at a networking event, exchanged business cards, smiled politely. Instead, we sat down as two people who had just watched their futures crack. He slid his phone across the table. Text messages from Madison. Boarding soon. Can't wait for some sunshine. I'll be off-grid for a few days. Love you. I showed him Ethan's. Chicago's going to be intense. Wish you were here. Daniel let out a quiet breath. Same departure time. Same day. Yes. We ordered coffee, neither of us touched. So what's the objective? He asked finally. Truth, I said. And consequences. He didn't flinch. I leaned forward slightly. I don't want a shouting match in a hotel lobby. I want them to feel the illusion collapse. Daniel's jaw tightened. You already booked a flight, didn't you? Yes. First class. No, I said evenly. Strategic. He almost smiled at that. I've reserved a suite at the same resort, I continued. Next door to theirs. His eyebrows lifted. You're serious. Very. For a moment, he stared out at the ocean. Then he looked back at me. Then I'm coming. We opened our laptops right there at the table. Same airline. Same arrival window 30 minutes before theirs. Daniel booked a rental car. I booked a dinner reservation at the resort's signature restaurant for the first evening. 4 seats. Under my name. We coordinated calmly, almost clinically. Excursions they had scheduled, sunset yacht cruise, private beach cabana we mirrored. Not to stalk. Not to threaten. To remove their privacy shield. They think this is a secret world, Daniel said. A bubble. Then we pop it, I replied. He hesitated. Are you prepared for what happens after? He asked. Because once we confront them, there's no going back. I already crossed that line when I opened the email. Daniel nodded slowly. There was no dramatic handshake between us. No pact sealed in theatrics. Just 2 adults agreeing on one principle. Silence protects deception. Visibility dismantles it. As we stood to leave, Daniel paused. Gianna, he said carefully, this isn't about revenge. right? I met his eyes. No, I said. It's about reclaiming the narrative. He gave a small, understanding nod. By the time Ethan's plane would descend over Cabo's coastline, the fantasy he'd packed into that Navy suitcase would already be unraveling. And this time, he wouldn't be controlling the story. Cabo smelled like salt and sunscreen. Daniel and I landed 35 minutes before Ethan's flight. We moved through the airport without rushing, like two people on an ordinary vacation. If anyone had looked at us, they would have seen calm. Inside, my pulse was steady. Not frantic, not shaking. Steady. Our driver held a small white sign with my name printed in clean black letters, Russo. Daniel glanced at me as we walked toward the car. Last chance to turn around. I adjusted my sunglasses. If I turn around now, they still get 5 days of lies. He nodded once. The resort was everything the booking photos promised: glass walls, polished stone floors, a view that stretched endlessly into blue. Couples checked in with excited smiles, honeymoon bracelets tied loosely around their wrists. The irony wasn't lost on me. We checked into our suite under my name. I requested a confirmation of room numbers for coordination with friends arriving later. The concierge smiled warmly. Your adjoining suite guests should be arriving shortly, Mrs. Russo. Adjoining. Perfect. Daniel and I didn't speak for a few seconds after the concierge walked away. Are you ready? He asked quietly. Yes. At 11:07 a.m. The front doors slid open again. Ethan walked in first, rolling his Navy suitcase. Madison followed, laughing at something he had said. His hand rested casually at the small of her back. The intimacy was effortless. That hurt more than I expected. He stepped toward the reception desk. Then he saw me. The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost surreal. Gianna? Madison turned at the sound of my name. Her eyes found Daniel. The smile disappeared. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The lobby noise faded into a distant hum. I stepped forward slowly. What a surprise, I said evenly. Chicago looks beautiful this time of year. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. Gianna, Madison's grip tightened on her suitcase handle. Daniel, what are you doing here? Daniel's voice was calm, controlled. Same question. A family walking past slowed, sensing tension. I kept my tone light. Actually, since we're all here, I thought we could skip the emails and save time. Ethan lowered his voice. We need to talk privately. Oh, we will, I replied. But first, I have a quick question. I turned to the concierge. Can you confirm whether this reservation was charged to Redwood Consulting under business expense classification? The concierge froze for half a second. Ethan stepped forward sharply. That won't be necessary. I didn't look at him. Just confirm whether it was billed as corporate travel. The concierge glanced at the screen. Yes, ma'am. It appears to be under corporate authorization. Daniel looked at Madison slowly. You told me this was self-funded. Madison swallowed. It's complicated. No, Daniel said quietly. It's not. Ethan finally found his voice. Gianna, this is a misunderstanding. 2 first-class tickets, couples massage, anniversary package? I asked. That's a detailed misunderstanding. Madison looked between us, panic flickering across her face. This isn't serious, she said quickly. It just happened. I studied her. Affairs don't just happen across airline confirmations and corporate billing codes. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. I didn't want to hurt you. The statement almost made me laugh. You didn't want to get caught, I corrected. Daniel took one step forward, his posture firm but not aggressive. We're not here to create a spectacle, he said. We're here for transparency. The concierge cleared his throat gently. Would you like separate check-in arrangements? Yes, I said. Ethan looked at me in disbelief. You planned this? Yes, I answered calmly. I did. Because chaos would have been emotional. Planning was power. Madison's voice cracked slightly. Daniel, can we talk alone? You had months to talk, he replied. You chose not to. There was no shouting, no dramatic gestures. Just the slow collapse of denial. The illusion that distance protected them had evaporated in under 3 minutes. As Ethan stood there, stunned, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry. I was finished. And that was far more dangerous. If part 4 was shock, Part 5 was gravity. By the time we reached the restaurant that evening, the initial panic had settled into something heavier awareness. The resort's signature dining room overlooked the ocean. Candlelight flickered across white linen tablecloths. Soft jazz floated through the air. It was designed for romance. Instead, it became a courtroom without a judge. Ethan and Madison were already seated when Daniel and I approached. 4 place settings. Just like I had reserved. Ethan stood immediately. Gianna, this isn't necessary. I pulled out my chair. It's overdue. Daniel sat beside me, calm, composed. Madison stared at her water glass like it might offer an escape route. The waiter arrived. Champagne for the table? He asked brightly. No, Ethan said sharply. Yes, I said at the same time. The waiter hesitated, then nodded politely. When he left, the silence returned. Ethan leaned toward me. You're humiliating us. I'm clarifying, I replied. Madison finally looked up. It wasn't supposed to get serious. Daniel's voice was measured. Define serious. She faltered. It was a connection. A connection with flight confirmations and anniversary packages? I asked gently. Ethan exhaled. It started as work. Late nights. Shared pressure. It escalated. And you never thought to mention it? I asked. He didn't answer. I placed a thin folder on the table. Inside were printed copies of everything. Flight itineraries, credit card statements, corporate billing logs. Daniel added his own stacked text exchanges, overlapping timestamps, hotel bookings from previous conferences. Madison's hand trembled as she reached for one of the pages. You went through my phone? No, Daniel replied calmly. I went through patterns. Ethan looked at me with disbelief. You contacted my firm. Yes. You could ruin my career. You risked it yourself, I said evenly. I only illuminated it. The champagne arrived. No one touched it. Madison's composure began to crack. You don't understand how trapped I felt, she said to Daniel. He blinked slowly. Trapped by what? Commitment? Ethan rubbed his temples. We were unhappy. Were we? I asked quietly. He looked up at me, surprised by the softness in my tone. Did you ever tell me that? Silence. Or was it easier to outsource your honesty? Daniel leaned back slightly, his eyes fixed on Madison. You asked me to put down deposits for the wedding while planning this. She swallowed. I didn't know how to end it. End what? He asked. Us? Or him? The ocean waves outside crashed softly against the shore. It felt like punctuation. I leaned forward. This dinner isn't about screaming. It's about choices. You both made them, repeatedly. Ethan's voice dropped. Gianna, I can fix this. Fixing requires disclosure before discovery, I said. You chose concealment, Madison whispered. Daniel, please. He stood slowly. I deserved honesty, he said. So did she. He looked at me briefly. Thank you, he added. For what? For refusing to stay silent. Ethan remained seated, staring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. You're overreacting, he muttered. No, I replied. I'm responding. There's a difference. The rest of dinner passed in fractured conversation. No raised voices. No dramatic exits. Just the dismantling of denial piece by piece. When the check arrived, Ethan instinctively reached for it. I placed my hand over his. Corporate card? I asked softly. He pulled his hand back. Daniel paid. Outside, under the dim resort lights, Madison attempted one last appeal. Daniel, we can work through this. He shook his head slowly. Trust isn't elastic, he said. It doesn't stretch without consequence. Ethan turned to me. I never meant to hurt you. I looked at him steadily. You meant to protect yourself. That was the final truth. And it was enough. As Daniel and I walked away toward the elevator, I felt the strange calm that follows clarity. No fireworks. No shouting match. Just the unmistakable sound of illusions collapsing. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. The next morning felt strangely quiet. No dramatic knock on the door. No tearful apologies echoing through hallways. Just sunlight stretching across the marble floor of my suite and the distant sound of waves meeting the shore. Daniel and I met for breakfast on the terrace. Neither of us had slept much, but not from chaos, from finality. They're trying to salvage it, Daniel said calmly, stirring his coffee. Madison keeps texting. Ethan had texted too. Please talk to me. We can fix this. Don't make permanent decisions out of anger. I hadn't responded. Anger fades. Documentation doesn't. At 9:17 a.m., Ethan's phone rang. We were seated only a few tables away when I saw his expression shift from irritation to alarm. He stood abruptly and walked toward the edge of the terrace. I didn't need to hear the conversation to understand it. His firm had opened an internal review. Redwood Consulting did not appreciate misclassified corporate travel, especially when someone had submitted supporting documentation. Daniel glanced at me. You already sent it. Yes. I figured. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt finished. Ethan returned 10 minutes later, face pale. They're suspending my client access until the review is complete. That's standard protocol, I said evenly. Madison arrived shortly after, clearly distressed. My investors want to review expense reports, she told Daniel. They think there are irregularities. Daniel didn't raise his voice. Transparency protects everyone, he said calmly. She stared at him like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. What she didn't understand was this. Calm isn't weakness. It's resolution. Later that afternoon, Ethan knocked on my suite door. I opened it halfway. Can we talk? He asked. We are talking. He ran a hand through his hair. This spiraled too far. No, I corrected. It unfolded. He exhaled slowly. You didn't have to involve my firm. You involved them when you used corporate funds. He winced. Gianna, 15 years. I know, I said quietly. That's why this isn't impulsive. He searched my face for softness. Are you leaving me? I didn't answer immediately. The ocean breeze carried through the hallway between us. I'm choosing myself, I said finally. That was the first time I heard it out loud, and it didn't sound dramatic. It sounded overdue. He stepped back slightly. I made a mistake. A mistake is misplacing keys, I replied. This was sustained deception. He didn't argue with that. For once. That evening, Daniel and I sat by the water, not celebrating, just breathing. You okay? He asked. Yes, I said honestly. Not happy. Not triumphant. But steady. The illusion had collapsed. Now came reality. Reality meant attorneys. Asset disclosures. Formal separation. It meant hard conversations with family. But it also meant no more guessing. No more second-guessing myself. The following morning, Daniel checked out early. I don't need to stay here anymore, he said. Neither did I. As we rode to the airport, he looked over at me. They thought distance protected them. They underestimated visibility, I replied. He nodded. And they underestimated you. For the first time since the email appeared on that tablet, I allowed myself a small smile. Back in San Diego, I scheduled a consultation with a family attorney, not out of revenge, out of clarity, because betrayal might shatter trust. But boundaries rebuild it, and I was done living inside someone else's illusion. 3 days after we returned from Cabo, I sat across from a family law attorney in a quiet office overlooking downtown San Diego. Her name was Margaret Collins, mid-50s, composed, precise, the kind of woman who didn't waste words. I'm not here to destroy him, I said as I handed her the folder. I'm here to protect myself. She nodded once and began flipping through the documents I'd prepared. Flight confirmations, corporate expense logs, bank statements, screenshots, property records. You're thorough, she observed. I work in compliance, I replied. That helps. She closed the folder and folded her hands. Are you seeking reconciliation or separation? The word hung in the air longer than I expected. Separation. 15 years reduced to a legal term. Formal separation, I said calmly. With full financial disclosure. Margaret nodded. Good. Documentation protects you. That sentence felt grounding. Documentation protects you. Not emotional speeches. Not promises. Facts. When Ethan received the legal notice, he called immediately. Gianna, lawyers. His voice sounded tired now. Smaller. Yes. You're escalating this. No, I said quietly. I'm structuring it. There was a long pause. You're serious. I've never been more serious. He exhaled slowly. You're not even giving us a chance. You had months of chances, I replied. You just didn't use them honestly. He didn't argue this time. Instead, his voice shifted. They've put me on probation at the firm, I heard. They're auditing travel expenses for the past year. That's standard compliance protocol. He laughed bitterly. You sound like you're reading policy. I am, I said evenly. Because policy doesn't lie. He was silent again. I didn't think you'd go this far, he finally admitted. That's the problem, I said. You didn't think. Across town, Daniel was navigating his own legal reset. He and Madison had shared investment holdings tied to wedding planning deposits and property ventures. He called me one evening. It's done, he said quietly. I've withdrawn from joint accounts. Are you okay? I asked. Yes, he replied after a beat. It hurts. But clarity hurts less than confusion. That line stayed with me. Clarity hurts less than confusion. Ethan tried one last time to persuade me to reconsider. We met at a neutral cafe, no rings on either of our hands. I've started counseling, he said. I can fix this. I hope you do, I replied gently. For yourself. For us. I shook my head slightly. You didn't lose me in Cabo, I said. You lost me every time you chose secrecy over honesty. He looked down at the table. I was afraid of disappointing you. You disappointed me by hiding, I answered softly. That was the final conversation where we spoke as husband and wife. After that, everything became structured. Asset division, property agreements, retirement accounts. Margaret handled it with clinical precision. No shouting, no public spectacle, just signatures. When the separation papers were finalized, I walked out of the courthouse and felt something unexpected. Not devastation. Relief. The marriage had ended quietly, not with violence, not with destruction, but with boundaries. Daniel texted that evening. How do you feel? I looked out at the Pacific from my car before replying. Lighter. Because losing someone who lies doesn't feel like losing love. It feels like removing weight you didn't realize you were carrying. And for the first time in a long time, my future didn't feel uncertain. It felt unwritten. And that was better. 6 months later, I wake up to the sound of waves instead of questions. My new condo sits just a few blocks from the Pacific. The balcony faces west, and every evening the sky dissolves into gold and violet like it's reminding me that endings can be beautiful too. The divorce was finalized quietly. No courtroom drama. No public spectacle, just signatures and acknowledgement. Ethan didn't contest the terms. The compliance investigation at his firm resulted in reimbursement, probation, and the kind of professional caution that lingers longer than any rumor. He sent me one final message the day everything was finalized. I'm sorry I underestimated you. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to negotiate. Madison's wedding never happened. Daniel told me her investors demanded restructuring and tighter oversight. Some partnerships dissolved. Others continued under new terms. He handled it calmly, like someone who had learned the cost of blind trust. Daniel and I still meet occasionally for coffee, not out of shared bitterness that faded months ago, but out of shared understanding. One afternoon, sitting across from him at our usual cafe, he said, "Do you ever wish you hadn't found out?" I thought about it. About the illusion. About the comfortable lie. No, I said finally, because not knowing would have cost me more. He smiled softly. You're different now. I am. Stronger, yes, but not hardened. There's a difference. Betrayal didn't turn me into someone cruel. It turned me into someone clear. Clear about boundaries. Clear about self-respect. Clear about the kind of partnership I will and will not accept again. Sometimes people ask if I regret going to Cabo, if confronting them face-to-face was necessary. I always answer the same way. It wasn't about confrontation. It was about reclaiming truth. Silence protects deception. Visibility ends it. I've started rebuilding in quiet ways. Therapy sessions that feel grounding instead of dramatic. Yoga at sunrise. Reconnecting with friends I unintentionally distanced myself from while trying to keep a marriage intact. I've even taken on new consulting clients, ironically specializing in corporate compliance ethics. Life has a sense of irony, but more than anything, I've learned this. Closure doesn't arrive as fireworks. It arrives as peace. The peace of knowing you chose dignity over denial. The peace of signing your name to documents that protect your future. The peace of standing on a balcony at sunset and realizing you are no longer waiting for someone else to validate your worth. Daniel texted me yesterday, thinking about taking a trip. Somewhere honest this time. I smiled when I read that. Maybe I'll go too. Not to chase someone. Not to expose someone. Just to travel. Because this time, if I board a plane, it will be for myself. This story isn't about revenge. It's about response. When betrayal enters your life, you have choices. You can react in chaos. Or you can respond with clarity. Documentation matters. Legal awareness matters. Boundaries matter. But above all, self-respect matters. Because the moment you stop protecting someone else's lie, you start protecting your own future.